How's it everyone? Jay here. In this video expedition we will examine the Expanse solar system map and the events that shape the orbits and territories of the planetary powers, covering 157 years starting with the Martian independence and Vesta blockades at the dawn of the 23rd and 24th centuries, spawning an interplanetary arms race that fueled the multi-generational Earth-Mars conflict. The year is 2225 and a long-simmering interplanetary independence movement has broke out into open confrontation. 130 years prior to Season 1, Mars was a planetary colony of the United Nations with a population just over 2 billion Earth settlers and pioneers. Nearly a quarter of the asteroid belt had been prospected, with a network of infrastructure dedicated to terraforming the Martian biosphere to one day have an Earth-like atmosphere to ease the burden of the overpopulated homeworld. Terraforming Mars into a Blue Earth 2.0 will be the largest endeavor in all of human history, spanning over 200 years into the 25th century. The United Nations of Earth and Luna consists the primary planetary governing body. The asteroid belt contains numerous trade ports and refinery stations, with the largest being Ceres, Tycho, Pallas, and Eros industrial hubs on the new frontier, now expanding to the outer planetary Jovian moons of Ganymede, Callisto, and Titan, with more outpost settlements under construction stretching to the gas giant moons of Oberon and Triton. As millions of settlers from the inner planets embark on long and harsh journeys in search of economic opportunities and employment towards the edge of the solar system. Over the past few decades, near the end of the 22nd century, a new political separatist movement gained popular momentum across Mars, with strong support throughout the provincial government and colonial authorities petitioning the United Nations oversight committees for Martian Commonwealth status, equivalent to that of Luna and the territorial trade zones on Earth, as an equal member of the UN Planetary General Assembly, as a self-governing body with delegate representatives elected by Martian citizens to replace colonial officials appointed by Earth Corporation lobbyists on the oversight committees that focus on profit margins for corporate investors and positive quarterly reports that have become increasingly unpopular each year with the Martian colonists. In 2218, the Martian Commonwealth proposal was drafted and approved for ratification by a 2/3 majority vote in the United Nations General Assembly. 252 delegates representing trade zones and colonial territories cast 140 ballots in favor, 77 against, with 35 abstains, defeating the Commonwealth resolution by only 3 votes, retaining Mars as colonial status. With common knowledge of widespread corruption in the General Assembly of lobbyists swaying delegates through economic and monetary incentives caused the separatist leadership within the Martian military to declare independence. Within a matter of days, 3 colonial fleets seceded from Earth Command, forming the Mars Corps Navy, as the UNN admirals and flag officers stepped down or were relieved of duties to be sent back to Earth. Vesta and Juno stations, along with the Callisto shipyard, soon followed suit, as the news spread through the asteroid belt, as the entirety of the outer Martian colonies separated into an independent force of 220 naval vessels, 3 belter stations, and a Martian Galilean moon. The colonial parliament of Mars remained neutral along with the planetary fleet to maintain diplomatic order in hopes of de-escalations towards a political compromise or solution with Earth to avoid a military confrontation after 5 days of the first interplanetary crisis. The United Nations Secretary General and Security Council invoked wartime emergency powers in an attempt to prevent the Martian succession through diplomacy as Earth fleets mobilized for action. After a 4-day deliberation, an ultimatum was conveyed to the Martian colony. Because this was a naval secession separate from the planet's provisional administration, Mars would be granted a probational 90-day Commonwealth status, allowing for 41 delegates to have additional seats on the UN General Assembly after the separatist fleets returned to Martian ports and to surrender to UN authorities, upon which a special session of the UN General Assembly would vote a second time for permanent Martian Commonwealth status, but maintain the increased representation on the UN Interplanetary General Assembly. 3 days later, the Mars Colonial officials responded to the UN diplomatic envoys by declaring planetary independence, with the first official act of the new republic uniting their colonial forces to form the Martian Navy, with a combined fleet total exceeding some 300 ships. Despite the United Nations Navy losing nearly 20% of their forces to the Martian naval secession, Earth Fleet Command still maintained a 5-to-1 ship advantage, deploying battle fleets towards Mars to reclaim their colonial planet. Yet the Generation 2 fusion drives of that era would take nearly 30 days to muster an adequate force to subdue the rebel fleets concentrated in Martian-controlled space. After the failure of negotiations, the United Nations received reports from the rogue fleet's former commanders returning to Earth of a newly developed fusion drive in Martian ships. Over the following days, UN intelligence agencies discovered that over a third of Martian vessels were equipped with advanced Epstein drives that Mars had developed in secret over the past 4 years following Solomon Epstein's breakthrough test flight discovery. This new ultra-speed advantage in sublight space travel would negate the UN Navy's overwhelming numerical superiority that could shift the upcoming battles in either direction during full-scale fleet engagements, and within 5 years the Martian technical edge could defeat Earth defenses minus a quick victory on the precipice of this interplanetary civil war. 5 days before the UNN strike fleets were set to confront the separatist navy in rebel-controlled space, standout orders were relayed to both forces. The one thing the leaders of Earth and Mars could agree upon was that the likelihood of a military conflict escalating into an interplanetary nuclear exchange was too high of a risk. In 2225, a negotiated settlement had been achieved for an independent Martian planetary nation with a 3-year plan for the transition of power, after which the Martian Republic would be officially recognized by the United Nations of Earth and Luna. Martian engineers would train UN specialists to replicate and produce the Epstein fusion drive, along with working prototype and design schematics for this game-changing technological breakthrough to include working Epstein drives that had been previously in service. In exchange, Mars will be a self-governing military power and retain the 230 gunships from the colonial fleets, along with 165 naval support vessels in the Martian Navy. Vesta and Juno research stations will remain under MCR jurisdiction, sharing terraforming and climate control technology with the UN for a period of 50 years as reimbursement for Earth core's engineering and infrastructure used to excavate the asteroid port's construction. Mars will maintain the remaining asteroid belt zones designated for the terraforming project, continuing under MCR jurisdiction, as managed and maintained by colonial fleets over previous decades. The Callisto Naval Shipyard's operational development will be absorbed by the Martian Republic, with the UN managing the Titan Station projects. Near the end of 2228, the Martian Commonwealth officially was recognized by the United Nations as the Martian Congressional Republic planetary nation, with a spaceborne military Marine Corps and fleet arm of the Mars Republic Navy, with official planetary treaties for defined orbits and borders. Over the next 75 years, the fourth generations of fusion drives cut solar system transit times by a factor of 5, opening the door for practical colonization to the outer planets. Economic and defense competition between the interplanetary superpowers opened the floodgates for this new frontier, turning modest space industries into economic titans, fueling the expansion like never before seen in human history, steering Earth and Mars into the Cold War vacuum of space that would inevitably burn hot, which is what will be covered in Part 3 of the Earth-Mars conflict known as the Vesta Blockade, at the dawn of the 24th century, 47 years before the Expanse Season 1. And for a breakdown of the strategic and tactical situations of the Sol system, check out my Prelude to the UN MCR War episode, unfolding during the Expanse Seasons 1 and 2, that is also part of my ongoing Earth-Mars conflict series. Peace out. Tini washi skud rasanante, tiki de kinds describe me sasake kano, unko pain share show taxton, imete natin yam saying. Inevitably. Oh my gosh, I can't talk.